right, looks like we're getting started, and I can see people are starting to trickle in. Uh, Hi, I'm Nick. I'm one of the solution consultants here at Computronics, and as we have people starting to come into the lobby, uh, if you could just post where you're from and where you're watching from, we'd love to know. Curtis and me are both in Edmonton, but I know we have people joining from all across North America, from the States and Canada. So yeah, if you'd be willing to throw that in the chat, we'd love to know where you're coming from. I'm really excited to host this webinar focused on the new AI features that are coming to Posse. Curtis, why don't you introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Curtis Donater. I am a consultant here at Computronics and a software developer on the development team. So I've been part of the team that's been looking into how we can leverage AI inside of Posse and get that working for our customers.
Awesome, yeah, and I see people are starting to put in where they're from. We've got people from Philadelphia, from the Yukon, which is awesome. Madeira. It's really great to see everyone. Yeah, please keep posting those in there. Throughout this presentation, also, we're going to be welcoming your questions. So if you have any questions as we do this demonstration, as Curtis does the technical part, please feel free to throw them in either the chat or the Q&A, whatever works best for you, and then we'll try to get to as many of those as we can. The next 45 minutes are really going to be about how AI can change the way that your users interact with the Posse customer portal and the staff portal. Now, the plan for today is pretty simple. In a few minutes here, I'm going to do a demonstration of the new AI features that are coming to Posse. Curtis is going to do a brief technical overview of how they work and kind of look under the hood. And then we'll do Q&A and try to answer some of your questions. Now, the examples you're going to see are from our Posse PLS COTS product, but the features are compatible with any Posse system for any of our clients. So it doesn't matter if you're ABC or platform, we can have those features interact on that for those clients.
And even further to that point, you're going to be seeing something in a PLS system, but specifically what we're showing, we've been working on some AI features as essentially prototypes. We've been working in our lab on these AI features, but we were recently asked to put something together that's a little bit more concrete as part of a demo for a prospective client. They even had a few very specific AI related requirements. And so we took that as a bit of a case study as to, okay, what would we actually do to implement AI in a Posse system? So you will see the branding for our prospective client in this demo that we're showing you today, just so you have a little context there. But ultimately, we were able to leverage some of the things we've been researching, that we've been looking into, and put that together into a more comprehensive package that we could present to you today. And it's an indication of the direction that we're planning to go with AI integration in Posse.
Yeah, I'm super excited to show it. Like Curtis is saying, these are in the pre-production phase, but we're really looking for clients who are excited about AI, who want to integrate these into their Posse system. So if you see this demo and you're as excited about AI as we are, please feel free to reach out to your account manager after the demo. So I think we've talked enough. Let's jump into the demo itself and see what AI looks like in Posse.
Let's jump into the demo. AI is changing the way we interact with technology. It's capturing people's imaginations. Computronics has been hard at work finding meaningful and impactful ways to integrate AI into Posse. So we're going to look at a couple of tools, one in the customer portal and one in the staff portal, that are going to change the way that you use Posse with AI. First tool we're going to look at is POSSE Assistant. The Assistant is a powerful AI chat window that elevates the way your users interact with the customer portal. It empowers users by making finding what they need easy. It reduces workload by being the first line of defense against easy-to-answer, repetitious questions. And POSSE Assistant can leverage some of the great tools your jurisdictions have made, as well as data within Posse itself. So let's dive in. Here I am on the customer portal. And before I log in as my user, Emily, we can see that POSSE Assistant is available to us in the bottom right-hand corner. The notifications and label make it easy to see right away. When I open up the Assistant, you'll see that this entire window is resizable. POSSE Assistant even works on mobile devices, and so it keeps with the responsive design of the customer portal. Notifications can be controlled as well. Now, let's say Emily wants to go ahead and look for the status of one of her permits. Well, she could log in, check her dashboard, and see what the status of her permit is there. POSSE Assistant lets her do this without even needing to log in. Emily can simply ask her a question in the chat window, and POSSE Assistant is going to give her an answer right away. Let's see if this is true. I'm going to log in as my user Emily. When we log in, this takes us to the Permitting and Inspections menu, where we can go ahead and apply for other permits. But if I scroll down, we're going to see our dashboard that collects everything Emily needs to find in one place. In fact, on the first page of this dashboard, under the Action Requires section, we can see that there is a permit number 52, and it is in a status where Emily needs to hand in revisions. So that information that exists in POSSE Assistant, is able to actually access. We can configure what are called tools in order to allow the assistant limited, controlled access to POSSE information. In the case we just saw, POSSE Assistant is able to recognize that it has a permit number, and then ask POSSE for specific information about that permit. In this case, what are the status and address? So we're really able to curate and control what information in POSSE the assistant has access to. In addition, users are able to give feedback. This is one of many data points that we are collecting to continually improve POSSE Assistant. Let's try something else. Say you have a new user in the system. They're brand new and they need help figuring out exactly what they need. Well, POSSE Assistant can help with more than just information. It can also provide follow-up actions as part of its responses. So if this brand new user, say, wants to build a subdivision and needs to know where to start, rather than just give them information, POSSE Assistant can also give them links. This link can take them right to the specific job they need. This allows users to get more out of Customer Portal than ever before. They can get exactly what they need right when they need it. The assistant can also provide email links, helping connect users with the staff that they actually need to talk to. Now, let's try something else. I'm going to go back to the home screen and see how POSSE Assistant handles an address. I'm going to give it an address I know very well. 13 Kenview Boulevard is in an industrial area of Brampton. I know this, and POSSE Assistant knows it as well. As you can see, POSSE Assistant is able to correctly bring up the zoning information for the address we give it. Not only that, it actually points us towards documents that we may want to know more about. This goes back to the idea of curated knowledge. POSSE Assistant effectively has two places that it can pull knowledge from: tools and content. In this response, we get both. It uses its tools to pull information out of GIS, specifically Brampton's GIS layers, to get the zoning information it needs. It also has access to specific content that we've given it. This takes the form generally of text files, maybe PDFs or other text-based content. In that information, using a vector database, POSSE Assistant is able to pull in even more information that we might want to see. The links to the documents come out of this content. So, it's a robust tool, and you can control what knowledge POSSE Assistant has access to give your users the best possible experience. Now, as I ask my next question, POSSE Assistant is able to follow along. It understands by context that we're still talking about 13 Kenview Boulevard, and gives us appropriate information, such as the height being 9 meters, or the setback being 7.5. POSSE Assistant here is pulling from different sources of information, whether that be its tools or its content. On the user side, it's seamless. Even if I change directions in this conversation and ask about a different address, POSSE Assistant is able to keep up. It understands what we're talking about. It checks Brampton's GIS maps and tells us right away that we can't build an ARU here. Now let's change directions entirely. What happens if I ask POSSE Assistant about an address that isn't even in Brampton? Well, our team of developers have been hard at work ensuring that the right guardrails exist around the prompting of POSSE Assistant. So as you can see, rather than give false information, rather than hallucinating, POSSE Assistant tells us it doesn't know. This is important to ensure that we're giving as accurate and complete information to the end user as possible. Let's try something else. Let's say our user Emily wants to go ahead and apply for a permit. How can POSSE Assistant help her with that? Well, the answer is that POSSE Assistant can do a lot. So as Emily, I'm going to go ahead and click the Apply for Permit button. It's easy to see right there in the middle of the screen. It's going to take us to our menu where we can see all the permits that I could apply for. We'll pick the residential building permit. You'll notice here that as we change screens, our POSSE Assistant icon is always visible in the bottom right-hand corner. The visibility of where the assistant is and isn't available is something that can be configured to meet your needs. We're just going to go ahead and skip on through to the next step. And for the sake of time, I'm going to jump over to the location step, where we can select where this residential building permit is going to apply to. I have a specific address that I want to use here, so I'm going to go ahead and select 42 Nevada Court. When I scroll down here, our GIS map is going to allow us to simply click the location we want and relate it to this permit. Now that I've selected an address, let's say Emily has a question as she's going through this application, and so she needs to know more about what she can do at this location. You'll see as I open the assistant and ask my question, I'm not giving POSSE Assistant the address I'm talking about. However, POSSE Assistant is still able to follow along with the context. So, it checks 42 Nevada Court and tells us that we can build an ARU here, but only one that's internal or attached. So there are two different tools that are happening here. On one hand, POSSE Assistant is using POSSE's internal data, and it's able to see where I am in context on the customer portal. It knows what address I've already selected. Meanwhile, it then takes that information and uses Brampton's GIS maps to get information about that address. This is a really powerful way to help users walk through and guide them through the application process as they go. On top of that, POSSE Assistant can help users retain that information. When they're done with the conversation, or at any point in the conversation, they can click the mail icon in the top right corner to get an AI summarized email of the conversation that they've had. This goes to whatever email address they put in, and then they have a record of the conversation to look back on in case they need the same guidance again. For example, if Emily gets information and needs to reassess her application, she can use her summary email as a guiding point next time she tries to apply. As you can see, POSSE Assistant is a robust AI tool that elevates the way your users interact with the customer portal. It helps them find what they need in one place. It reduces your staff's workload. And it collects data from inside of POSSE and your GIS maps and other tools you've created to provide extra value to your users. POSSE Assistant is our answer for how AI can empower the customer portal. Now there's one more thing I want to show you. In the staff portal, POSSE has highly configurable searches that allow different groups of users to have exactly what they need when they search. Using AI, we've created a smart search that allows users to ask their questions in plain conversational English and have the AI find the appropriate search for them and then fill it in. So, when I finish typing my question, Smart Search is going to bring up a list of all the searches it thinks might answer my question. All I need to do is select the search I want. Then Smart Search will automatically fill in the criteria and perform the search. As you can see, this gives us the best of both worlds. On one hand, we have our highly configurable searches for different user groups to meet their needs. On the other hand, we have one easy location where people can ask their questions in natural language and find the information that fits their question. Even if I ask something ambiguous like Nicholas Almeida, Smart Search is able to give us a list of different searches that might fit our criteria. Is Nicholas Almeida a customer, a defendant, a user? Once I know what I want, Smart Search will automatically fill out the criteria so I can navigate where I need to go. As you can see, AI is coming to POSSE. POSSE Assistant and Smart Search change the way that users interact with both the staff portal and the customer portal, and provide more value than ever before.
All right. Well, I'm going to give us a bit of a break from hearing Nick's dulcet tones and start talking a little bit about the technical implementation. But before I do, if there's anything in that presentation from actually getting to see it that you've got some questions about, go ahead and use that Q&A feature up at the top. We've already got some questions coming in from things that people were curious about from the demo. But we're going to make sure that we've got some time to answer any questions that you submit throughout the presentation. And that also goes for anything that I talk about on the technical side, because as Nick was mentioning off the top, I'm going to dive into a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, what's under the hood, how does this work? And so if anyone has further questions about that from a slightly more technical interest, I'm happy to answer some of those questions as well. So from a technical implementation, so for anyone who's saying, I see in the chat that for someone Q&A is not enabled, and I apologize if that's the case, and feel free in that case then to post your question in the chat. And the only difference is really that then everyone will see it in advance. So, but we will be actively monitoring both the Q&A feature and the chat. As I mentioned, some people have submitted to Q&A. So for those of you who aren't able to access Q&A, I apologize. I'm not sure why some people have access to it and some don't. Anyways, to talk a little bit about the implementation of the tools that you saw there, we have the POSSE Assistant chatbot from a customer-facing perspective, and we have the Smart Search. I'll start by talking about the customer-facing chatbot integration. And hilariously, the thing that I was just about to say, someone just posted a question about what fortuitous timing. So the question is, what LLM model are we using? So the current implementation, we are using an OpenAI model. We're using GPT 4.1 mini, and we're doing that with Microsoft Azure's implementation, the Azure OpenAI implementation of GPT 4.1 mini. And then as we're using that, and by the way, any other context in questions we'll address closer to the end. So, so along with that, obviously we're not just taking the prompts that the user are putting into the chatbot and sending them directly to the model without any other guardrails or without any specification. We need to make sure that all of the answers that the chatbot are giving is actually relevant for the POSSE system and for that specific implementation of POSSE for that client. So what we did, again, this is a prospect, so this is a little bit of a different exercise than we expect to do with anyone who's actually going to be implementing this, because we kind of had to come up with this on our own, whereas in an actual implementation project, we would expect to work together. So what we did was, first, we wanted to get a data set together that could be used to answer questions based on information that was specific to that prospective client. So in order to do that, we first got a bunch of the publicly available information from the website, both by doing just some screen scraping of websites. We got the website pages from their building area, from the planning and development area, and then from actually the region's website, we got some information about land use planning, and we got all those documents together from the websites. Then we also, their zoning code was implemented as a bunch of PDF documents. And so we got all of those documents, we got the PDFs from zoning, we got the website areas, and we uploaded these all to what Azure OpenAI describes as a vector store. And then what that does is it essentially takes that information and indexes it in a way that the AI is able to look up the information. And then we craft the system prompt for this AI to say, any questions that are being asked about things like zoning or anything that requires looking up specific information, you need to look at this data store first. If the data store doesn't have this information, don't give this information. You know, if someone's asking a question, like we saw in the demo, where Nick asked a question about an address that isn't in the city of Brampton, the AI just said, no, I don't know about anything about that, and I'm going to decline to answer the question. So that's the first part, is that we collected this information. And that is something that we expect on a go forward basis, that in order to answer questions that are domain specific, that there will be a curated selection of content that we expect that you will be able to actually curate to say, okay, these are the documents that we want to be able to answer questions about. So as zoning code, as building code, as other restrictions, as other initiatives come up, that those documents can be added to the data store. But then you don't need to do any additional tuning to say, like, well, make sure that topics like this go to the data store. That the AI can figure out the context for itself, which is fantastic. All you need to do is make sure that the content's up to date. So that's the first part, is the content. And you heard in the demo, Nick was talking about, we have content and then we have tools. So let's talk about those additional tools. So we've got two categories of tools, or functions, if you will. We've got the built-in tools that will come with every installation of POSSE Assistant. That is the integration with POSSE stuff itself. So the ability to query the status of an application, that is going to come out of the box. The ability to get the context of what the user is looking at. So as they've selected an address, to be able to say, oh, okay, well, I see in the context of what you're doing right now in the application, this is the information that you have. So let me use that information. That comes built in. The tool of being able to navigate throughout the application. So for example, the demo showed that ability to link to pre-consultation application when someone wanted to start doing a subdivision. It's like, well, this is the first step, so come to this first step. Those are certain tools that will be that are built in, although they're also configurable to work within the specific permit types and other job types that exist, licenses that exist within your system. And those will come, with every PLS and ABC implementation. And so then there's another set of tools, another category, which is tools that are developed in consultation and in collaboration with our customers, with you. And again, because this was a prospect, we kind of invented this ourselves. But in this case, we used publicly available GIS layers from the city of Brampton in order to answer some of these questions. So for example, anytime we're getting the zoning information from an address, we could theoretically, if that information was loaded into POSSE, get that information from POSSE. But otherwise, we're using GIS layers in order to query the information about the zoning. Similarly, we asked a few questions in the demo about the suitability of various addresses for building additional residential units. Can they have a suite? Can I build a suite out in the backyard, in the garden? Or can it only be a rental suite? As it so happens, the city of Brampton has a tool that, given an address, it's actually a map-based tool, but given an address, it will get that suitability for an additional residential unit. And so we implemented that as a tool that the AI is aware of, so that if you ask that question, the AI says, oh, I know how to answer that question. I have this tool available to me, and it will make a call out to that service. So all of that information is actually up to date in real time based on the tools that are available from the city of Brampton. So this is what we would expect to do as part of an implementation project. Is we'd come in, we would have these standard offerings, but anything that you might want to do, whether it's from the capabilities to look up information, to be able to provide a link to somewhere else in an application, even potentially to get something started, like to actually do an activity and an action to create something, is something that we have the ability to tie in to that chatbot. Okay, so that's the chat integration. The Smart Search tool, which is really fantastic for your internal users to just be able to do that natural language processing instead of trying to figure out which search you need to use. We're really excited about that. It ties in similarly to some of what we've been doing with our real-time reporting, like our business intelligence tool with the ThoughtSpot integration, which also has that natural language capability. So this is an extension of that concept, where the Smart Search tool, it's also using GPT-4o Mini behind the scenes, but we've essentially just told the AI about all of the searches that are available in the environment, both the ones that come standard with PLS and ABC and any customer specific searches that we have as part of your implementation, and given it the list of here's the searches, here's what it returns, and here are the various search criteria. So then when you put in that, hey, I want to find this thing, it goes through that list of searches. It'll identify up to 5 of the most suitable options. You saw that in the case where Nick just put his own name in, and that it had five possible results. And then when you select the search, it will automatically fill in the criteria for you as well. So if you were to look for, I want something, I want everything that was submitted within the past X number of days that's in a status of draft, you don't have to go to the specific link to find those things. You could just put that into a natural language query. And then, as you saw, it opens up the search and automatically executes the search. So that's just a little bit of the under the covers on the technical details of all this stuff. It's been really exciting to see some of the capabilities, and even some of the things that, if I can get a little bit technical on for a second, just on the as an excitement from a software development thing. Anyone who's more technical on the screen, who's actually been involved in doing POSSE configuration, might know what a pain it is to deal with things like address normalization, right? Where someone is typing in an address into something, but the street name is abbreviated not the way that it's stored in the database, or the capitalization is wrong, or the suite number is in the wrong order. One of the things that's fantastic about AI and natural language processing is that you just put in the rules for, well, this is what the address is supposed to look like. And then you don't have to think about it anymore, because the AI will look at the address and go, well, it really should be like this based on what you told me, and just do all of it for you. So some of the things that have been, that are challenges in software development in general, are the things that AI makes really easy. And so it's been very interesting to look at all of this and even potentially dream about what else we can do. And that's what we'd like to do with you, is to open that up to say, well, what are you hoping to achieve? Here's some of our offerings. What would you like to achieve with it? And then what can we do together to make that happen? But at the moment, we have a pretty good offering that we're excited to work with you to implement.
Yeah, thanks, Curtis. It is really exciting. POSSE Assistant and Smart Search are just really powerful tools. So, want to get to the Q&A. I know there's lots of questions flying into the Q&A and in the chat. I'm going to start with one I think probably is on most people's mind. Curtis, what version of POSSE is the Assistant available for?
Great question. So for the customer-facing tool, what we were demonstrating was a WebUI customer portal. For WebUI, the chatbot is relying on some features that were introduced in POSSE version 7.4.2 to be able to include tools like chatbots into the system. If your customer portal is still implemented using Outrider, we are relying on features that were introduced in at least POSSE version 7.3. Obviously, I would always encourage people to be on the latest version that you can be on. But so for Outrider, minimum 7.3, for WebUI, minimum 7.4.2 to be able to include the chatbot. And then for the POSSE Smart Search, that is going to be a POSSE 8 specific feature. So you need to be on 8.2 and no specific 8.2 version, just any 8.2 branch.
Awesome. Another question for you. In the first example, the demo mentioned that without logging in, the assistant is able to get the status of a specific permit. Can any user, even those not directly involved with the application, obtain those details? Or other information such as the address?
Right. So that feature specifically is kind of going off of the idea that you would have publicly available searches in your customer portal. And so then we were thinking, well, the AI should be able to do anything that you can also do as a guest user in the tool. Across the board, I can say the AI tools will not let you do anything that you would not already have permissions to do. It's going to operate on whatever permissions you currently have. So if your implementation does not have public-facing searches and public-facing information, then we would not allow you to do that. But if, on the other hand, I was just walking the other day and there was a demolition in the area that I was working for, and they had the permit there with the number, and so if I want to be able to look that up, you would be able to use POSSE Assistant to look that up if that was publicly available information.
Awesome. There's a question also about RAG for POSSE Assistant, so retrieval augmented generation. Does POSSE Assistant do any retrieval augmented generation?
Yeah, that's great. So that is the technology that powers the documents that I was talking about, where we were uploading the documents to the vector store. Assistant Vector Store is the name that Microsoft Azure's OpenAI implementation has for what we would call retrieval augmented generation. And it's pretty neat because it's internally it will do things like query optimization in order to essentially like reasoning model kinds of things, where it will look up information, and if it doesn't find information that it thinks is relevant, it will reword the prompt in order to try and find better information. And so I do see, I noticed another question that was asking, if I can, about, how are we converting PDF and TIFF and other file types to machine searchable? Presently, the AI tools that we're using, the OpenAI tools that Azure provides, does that automatically. The moment that you upload something to the Assistant Vector Store, it will do that processing and indexing for you. And our expectation would be that when we're doing the implementation so that you can manage your own content, that all of that would be essentially handled automatically. I wouldn't expect any of our clients to have to do that re-indexing manually. But I believe, I'm sure under the covers, it's using an OpenAI embedding engine or model. I forget the exact terminology for that, in order to break the content apart and vectorize it.
Awesome. One question just came in, and I really think this is a fun one. Can users provide feedback and flag incorrect responses to improve the model?
Right. Yeah, you'll notice in the demo that there were little thumbs up, thumbs down icons under every single chat message. We have a feature that's built in that will actually take those that thumbs up and thumbs down content, and it will record all of it. So it's all getting recorded back right now into POSSE. And the idea behind that is then, right now, we've just chosen to record that information. The idea would be that we can use that to help optimize the responses, generally by using features that are available, like fine tuning. And the way that fine tuning essentially works is that you give examples of a prompt and then good responses to that prompt, and then the AI agent will figure that out and will use that to help hone its information. So presently, in our prototype, we don't have any sort of automatic fine tuning happening, but we could set that up that it happens automatically, or that it could happen that it gets reviewed, just in case someone's, we don't agree necessarily with the thumbs up, thumbs down. Right now it's curated. So we keep a log of all of the conversations and the feedback on them.
Awesome. Let's see here. Another question is about security. Are there protections in place to prevent bots from scraping data from the agent? What other security measures are in place for non-public or authenticated information from being exposed through the agent?
Right. So the security measures in place are that the agent it runs only under the context of the current user session. Any system level access is set up with security that only, any unauthenticated access is only given the same POSSE permissions that an unauthenticated user is. So any information that it's getting out of POSSE, you would have all of the contexts. Sorry, I'm wording this poorly. What I mean to say is that the agent only has the security to do what your current context does. So if you're running in an unauthenticated guest context, you can only get the information you'd be able to get as an unauthenticated guest. If you're running as a user, you can only get the information that that user can get. And so on that basis, when it comes to bot scraping or something like that, well, the bot, it can't do anything more than you could also do by just typing and giving additional prompts. In terms of layers of security, though, in terms of preventing bots from doing things like denial of service type attacks or like flooding the LLMs or generating racking up charges, that would be something that we would have as part of our fence to say like, no, okay, anytime that you've got that kind of content coming in at those volumes, we would start denying it after a certain volume.
Awesome. Yeah, one example of required actions based on the user you're logged in as. During that demo we just saw, you have the ability to have these buttons pop up that can take you to a permit that you need to apply for, like the pre-consultation. We've tried that before from being an unauthenticated user, and it'll take you to the login screen first because you have to be an authenticated user for that kind of application. So you have to log in before you can move on to the next step effectively. Another question here is, will the AI suggest next steps for a permit or case based on business rules?
Right. So that ability to see the current context is key in order to be able to suggest next steps. And given that this is a prototype, we've looked into that, but haven't actually gone all the way through with it. So this is actually where I would say, hey, based on some of those business rules, this is something that we would like to implement as a tool to say, okay, what are the next steps available? So I would say it is certainly within the realm of possibility, and in fact, actively something that we'd like to look into. I will say, and I don't know whether we have another, I know we've presented on this before in the past, but we do also have an integration with a partner of ours named Archistar that will actually take their tool will take your documents, your blueprints and drawings that have been submitted, and compare them with the city's building code and zoning codes, and then we'll do a lot of the initial setup of the permit. So that is another option as well, as in addition to the POSSE Assistant, is to use the Archistar integration in order to really help the users circumvent a lot of the busy work of entering a permit application, and in some cases even potentially getting an immediate turnaround on some of those. So we have a couple of AI offerings that allow you to do next steps based on business rules.
Cool. One question came in here about how do you measure quality end-to-end, and how does this version score?
And how does what score, sorry?
How does this version of POSSE Assistant in terms of answer quality?
Oh, yeah. So one of the ways that we measure the quality end to end is using that feedback tool once it's actually public. Internally, we haven't created a metric precisely to determine the score that we could score it out of 10 or anything like that. But we do, we've through a lot of testing honed those prompts in order to make sure that the quality is there. And that's where honestly, because, I mean, we all know about how AI works and how it likes to answer questions authoritatively, even when its information is not correct. And getting it to that place where it will consistently say, no, I won't answer this question that I don't have information about was a win for sure. So I mean, I don't have a score out of 10, but I would say in general, where we've gotten to with this proof of concept is the information has been consistent, it's been accurate, and I shouldn't say consistent because it will answer the same question different ways, but it won't give differing results. It will just phrase it differently, or it might link to a supporting document in some cases, and in other cases not link to that supporting document. So far, again, I don't have a metric, but I would say we're happy with it. And if we weren't, we wouldn't be presenting it at this point to say that we actually want to implement it. We would still be working on it.
Absolutely. I'm going to give you one last question here. What can you talk to about in terms of confidentiality? Where is the data stored? Is there any protection on the data? Is it stored in the cloud or elsewhere?
Yes. So for confidentiality, what we obviously the LLM itself is running within Microsoft Azure. So any information that's contained in a prompt, which includes information that comes from the system that needs to be processed by the AI, does go into the Azure OpenAI implementation. And so that's where then Azure's OpenAI restrictions on what they do with client confidentiality needs to apply, which I won't go into all of that in this session. Like that's a lot of documents to read. But from the information on the POSSE side, all of the information continues to be stored in POSSE. Our logs about about conversations, we're storing that in the POSSE database as well presently. That may change to an external database in the future. We'll have to see. Depends on volume. And then the documents themselves that we harvest from the public website, or if it's private information, that's something that we would work with you on to determine what those documents are. Those are going into a essentially Microsoft Azure hosted vector database. So again, you'd have to look, we would talk you through the Azure security information. So, but then pretty much everything that was shown in this context is all publicly available information anyway. So there's little from a confidentiality perspective. But yes, everything you can't really get away from the fact that the prompts are going to the AI. So even internal POSSE information that the AI is using to answer questions, that information is going through Azure's AI models.
Cool. Thanks, Curtis. I know we still have...
There is one last question that just came in that I do want to answer quickly. The question, is there an API for extending or embedding AI capabilities into other applications? And the answer to that question, the way that we're intending to implement the tools and functions is using standards like the Model Context Protocol, MCP, in order to be able to build discrete tools. So the expectation would be that potentially even without too much computronic support, you'd be able to build your own tools that the POSSE Assistant would be able to call. So that's a great question. Anyways, now I'm done.
All right. So I know there's still tons of questions. If we haven't gotten to your question, don't worry. We're going to keep track of all these questions and then reach out through your account manager. Like Curtis has said, we anticipate this is going to be a small project where a CX team collaborates with a client to implement this. So if this is something you're interested in, please reach out to your account managers, and then we will start on those projects. So just want to say thank you all for attending and participating in this webinar, and we look forward to seeing you at the next one.